Welcome to Reflect with Ed Fassio. Get ready to experience one of the world's first 100% digitally generated podcasts, where we take a step back, dive deep, and strive to learn new things. Join us as we unpack thought-provoking ideas, personal reflections, and inspiring stories to help you stay in the know. Reflect is brought to you by the minds at ByteBrain and powered by emerging technologies from Google, HeyGen, OpenAI, and 11 Labs. Thanks for tuning in. Now, relax and prepare to reflect.
Hey there, and welcome to the Deep Dive.
Right.
We're diving into something today that's both fascinating and a bit unsettling: age discrimination in the tech industry.
What's interesting here is that we're not just talking about people in their 60s or 70s being pushed out. We're seeing individuals in their 30s and 40s, people who are arguably at the peak of their careers, facing significant roadblocks.
The sources we've got for this deep dive really lay it all out. We've got expert opinions from tech conferences, in-depth investigative articles, personal stories from tech workers that'll really make you think.
Absolutely.
And some legal analysis that, well, it's pretty complicated.
Yeah, our goal today is to sift through all of this information and give you, the listener, a clear picture of what age discrimination looks like in the tech world.
Okay.
Whether you're a seasoned tech professional or just starting your journey, there's something here for everyone.
But let's start with some numbers from the U.S. Department of Labor.
Okay.
By next year, they predict that nearly 25% of the workforce will be 55 or older. But here's the kicker in the tech industry. The average employee age is a shockingly young 31.
That's a huge difference.
It's a huge EE difference.
It's a demographic time bomb waiting to explode.
Yeah.
And the stories from former IBM employees that we have in our sources really bring this issue to life.
Okay.
Take Marjorie Madfus, for example. She's a digital marketing strategist who was laid off alongside 6 other women in their 40s and 50s, while younger men in the same department kept their jobs.
Wow. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And it's not an isolated incident. We also have the story of Ed Alpern, who was forced to retire just to protect his son's scholarship eligibility. Oh. And then there's Paul Henry, a sales specialist who dedicated decades to IBM, only to be told to keep your mouth shut and go quietly when it was his time to go.
It's just wrong.
These are real people with families, mortgages, and dreams suddenly finding themselves cast aside.
Absolutely.
These stories really highlight the emotional and financial devastation these layoffs cause.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, how can this be happening? How is this even legal?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
We have the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, the ADEA, which was created to protect workers who are 40 and older.
Okay, sounds great in theory, right?
Sounds great.
But in practice?
In practice, legal precedents over the years have made it extremely difficult for employees to actually prove they've been discriminated against based on age.
So you've got this law that's supposed to protect you, but it's almost impossible to use.
Exactly.
Oh.
And some of the actions taken by IBM, as detailed in our sources, raise some serious questions.
Like what?
They actually removed age from the list of discrimination claims employees waive in severance agreements.
Oh, wow.
At the same time, they stopped disclosing the ages of laid-off employees, even though they're legally required to do so.
So are they trying to be sneaky, or is this just some clever legal maneuvering? It definitely raises some red flags.
It does, and this connects to a broader debate. Is there any justification for the tech industry's obsession with youth? Venture capitalist Vinod Khosla famously said, "People under 35 are the people who make the changes." But if we look at the research from MIT, the U.S. Census Bureau, and Northwestern University, we see that the average age of founders of high-growth startups is actually 45.
Wait, hold on. So the data directly contradicts that youth makes the changes argument.
It does, and it's not just about founders.
Okay.
Let's talk about the COCOMO model, which is a software project estimation model used in the tech industry.
Okay, break that down for me.
Yeah.
What exactly is the COCOMO model?
It's a way of estimating how long it will take to complete a software project.
Okay.
And it takes into account things like the complexity of the project and the experience of the developers.
Right.
The problem is the highest experience multiplier in this model caps out at 6 years.
So you're saying that someone with 20 years of experience is treated the same as someone with only 6 years?
Essentially, yes.
Wow.
Decades of hard-earned experience are potentially devalued in the eyes of the tech industry. And when you combine that with personal anecdotes from tech workers who faced both subtle and overt ageism,
Right.
it paints a pretty disturbing picture.
Yeah.
We have stories of someone being called a dino at the ripe old age of 37.
Oh, my God.
Others being told they're too old for a position by recruiters.
Whoa.
And even hiring managers who were intimidated by the experience of candidates.
That's crazy to think that just having too much experience could hurt your chances of getting hired.
It really is.
So even if you manage to get past the initial screening process,
Right.
ageism can still creep in during the hiring process itself.
Absolutely. It often starts with the job ads themselves.
Okay.
You'll see coded language that favors younger workers, words like dynamic, energetic, fast-paced. And then there's the growing trend of requiring graduation dates on applications, which is a pretty clear way of trying to screen out older candidates.
It's like they're trying to weed out anyone who remembers dial-up internet.
Exactly. And it's driving people to take some pretty drastic measures.
Like what?
We found real-world examples of individuals dumbing down their resumes to appear younger.
Oh, wow.
They're removing years of experience, even deleting advanced degrees, just to get their foot in the door.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
Imagine feeling like you have to erase parts of your career, your identity, just to be considered for a job.
It's a desperate situation for many.
Yeah.
And then there's the classic overqualified excuse.
Right.
On the surface, it might sound like a compliment,
Yeah.
but it often masks age discrimination, especially when it's paired with concerns about salary expectations and that elusive cultural fit.
So what they're really saying is you're too expensive and you won't fit in with our young and trendy team.
Pretty much.
Ugh, it's frustrating.
It is.
But it's important to remember that this isn't just a tech industry problem.
Right.
It's a societal issue that affects everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And with the way our demographics are shifting, lower birth rates, longer lifespans, we're going to see an even older workforce in the years to come.
Mm-hmm.
This is a problem we can't afford to ignore.
Exactly. And there's a mountain of research showing that age-diverse teams are the most successful.
Okay.
Companies that embrace age inclusion are going to have a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
They'll have access to a wider talent pool, benefit from the experience and wisdom of older workers,
Yeah.
and create a more inclusive and equitable workplace.
So it's a win-win situation for everyone.
It really is.
But let's be real for a second. There are some very real economic concerns that companies have when it comes to an aging workforce.
Yeah.
Healthcare costs, for example.
That's a valid point, and it highlights the need for companies to rethink their healthcare benefits and workplace wellness programs.
Yeah.
We need to move away from a system that penalizes older workers and towards one that supports healthy aging and long-term careers.
That's a great point. It's not just about hiring older workers. It's about creating a workplace where they can thrive and contribute for years to come.
Absolutely.
But I have to ask, with all the talk about AI and automation taking over jobs, is the future of work even more uncertain for older workers?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Will the skills and experience of older workers be seen as valuable in the age of AI, or will they be further marginalized? That's something we need to think about carefully.
It's a lot to unpack, for sure.
It is.
But before we go any further, I want to hear from you, the listener. What are your thoughts on all of this? What's resonating with you so far?
You know what really strikes me is how open everyone is about ageism these days. We've got CEOs openly admitting to preferring younger workers' job postings going viral because they explicitly say they hire old people. It's like ageism has become this open secret that everyone knows about, but nobody wants to actually deal with.
It's like the elephant in the room that everyone pretends isn't there.
Right.
Or maybe we should call it the Dino in the room.
Exactly.
Based on that charming term we heard earlier.
And what's truly alarming is this blatant disregard for the law. We talked about IBM's tactics to get around the ADA, but they're not the only ones doing this. Companies are getting incredibly creative in finding ways to discriminate without leaving a paper trail. They use subtle language in job descriptions, make vague excuses about cultural fit, and even use social media to screen out candidates based on their perceived age.
So it's becoming harder for older workers to even get a foot in the door, let alone prove they've been discriminated against. It's like a rigged game.
That's the heart of the problem. It's creating a climate of fear and desperation for many experienced professionals. One of our sources, someone who had been looking for a job for months, finally resorted to dumbing down their resume. They removed years of experience, even their master's degree, just to get a callback. It worked.
Wow.
But the emotional toll was huge. Imagine feeling like you have to erase parts of your career, your identity, just to be considered for a job.
It's dehumanizing. It feels like these companies hold all the power, and older workers are left with no choice but to play by their rules, even when those rules are unfair.
It makes you wonder what happens if you do manage to get hired. Does the ageism stop, or does it just take on different, more subtle forms?
That's a great question. We need to think about the dynamics in the workplace. Are older workers being excluded from social events, passed over for promotions, or given less challenging assignments? Is there a sense that they're not really part of the team?
Exactly. And we have evidence that this is happening. One person in our sources talked about how their manager actually expressed concern that their experience might threaten their own job. It's like they felt threatened by someone with more knowledge and expertise.
Talk about insecurity. It's messed up. I remember working with someone who was much older than me, and instead of feeling threatened, I saw it as an amazing opportunity to learn from their experience. They had a wealth of knowledge to share, and I was like a sponge soaking it all up.
That's the kind of attitude we need to see more of. But unfortunately, the tech industry has this cultural obsession with youth and novelty, and it can create a toxic environment where experience is seen as a liability rather than an asset.
It's this always-on hustle culture that's so prevalent in tech. It can be incredibly alienating for older workers who might have different priorities and commitments outside of work.
Absolutely. The expectation to be at every company softball game, late-night hackathon, or after-work drinks can be really tough for people with families, caregiving responsibilities, or simply a desire for a better work-life balance.
It's like they're expected to fit into this narrow definition of what a tech worker should be, and if they don't, they're out.
So this brings us to a critical question. How do we change this narrative? How do we shift the culture in tech to one that values and embraces experience?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's not just a question for the tech industry. It's a question for society as a whole. As we've been discussing, ageism is a societal issue, and it's going to take all of us working together to combat it.
I completely agree. But within the tech industry, there are a few specific things we can do. First and foremost, age inclusion needs to be an essential part of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI initiatives.
Right. It's often overlooked. But age is just as important as race, gender, or sexual orientation when it comes to creating a truly inclusive workplace.
Exactly. And companies need to go beyond just talking about it. They need to implement real policies and practices that support older workers.
So what would those policies look like? What are some concrete steps companies can take?
Here are a few ideas. They can provide training for hiring managers on age bias and inclusive hiring practices. They can remove age-identifying information from job applications like graduation dates. They can offer flexible work arrangements and benefits that cater to the needs of older workers, and they can create mentorship and sponsorship programs that connect older workers with younger employees, fostering intergenerational learning and collaboration.
Those are great ideas.
Right.
It's all about creating a culture of respect and appreciation for the unique contributions that older workers bring to the table.
It really is. And it's not just about what companies can do, it's also about what we as individuals can do.
So what can we do as individuals? What actions can we take to make a difference?
We need to speak up against ageism whenever we see it. Whether it's a casual joke, a discriminatory job ad, or a biased hiring decision.
Right. It's about calling out those subtle and not so subtle forms of ageism. We need to challenge those stereotypes and celebrate the value of experience.
Absolutely. And we need to support organizations that are fighting for the rights of older workers, whether it's through advocacy, legal action, or research.
Organizations like ProPublica, for example, their investigative reporting on age discrimination at IBM was groundbreaking, and it really shone a light on how systemic this problem is.
Exactly. And their ongoing work in this area is crucial to holding companies accountable and driving real change.
But it's not just about fighting against something negative. It's also about building something positive. We need to create a vision for the future of work that includes people of all ages, where experience is valued and where everyone has the opportunity to contribute and thrive.
I love that. And I think that vision is starting to emerge. We're seeing more companies recognize the benefits of age diversity and create workplaces that support multi-generational teams.
That's encouraging. And it makes good business sense, too. As the workforce continues to age, companies that fail to adapt will be left behind.
Exactly. The companies that thrive in the future are the ones that embrace the full spectrum of human experience and talent, and that includes the wisdom, resilience, and institutional knowledge that older workers bring to the table.
I couldn't agree more. But let's be realistic. There are still many challenges ahead. We've talked about the economic anxieties around an aging workforce, and healthcare costs are a major concern for both companies and individuals.
Absolutely. And this is where we need some innovative solutions. We need to shift away from a healthcare system that's reactive and expensive and move towards one that focuses on preventative care, wellness, and healthy aging.
Right. It's about investing in the long-term health and well-being of the workforce, not just putting Band-Aids on problems as they arise.
Exactly. And it's about creating workplaces that promote healthy lifestyles and give employees of all ages access to resources that support their physical, mental, and emotional well-being.
That's a great point. It's not just about healthcare. It's about creating a culture of well-being within companies.
Precisely. And it's about recognizing that a healthy and engaged workforce is a productive workforce, regardless of age.
But with technology changing so rapidly, are we doing enough to make sure older workers have the skills they need to stay relevant in the future?
That's a critical question. We can't just talk about inclusion. We need to provide concrete opportunities for older workers to upskill, reskill, and adapt to the changing demands of the workplace.
What would those opportunities look like?
Things like offering training programs, mentorship opportunities, and even apprenticeships that allow older workers to learn new technologies and gain in-demand skills.
It's about investing in their future and ensuring that they have the tools and resources they need to succeed in the long term.
Exactly. And it's about changing our mindset about what aging looks like in the workplace. We need to move away from this idea that older workers are stuck in their ways and embrace the fact that they are often the most adaptable, resilient, and resourceful members of our teams.
I love that. It's about seeing aging as a strength, not a weakness, and recognizing that the future of work depends on harnessing the talents and perspectives of people of all ages. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're continuing our exploration of age discrimination in the tech industry, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts.
You know, one thing that's been on my mind is how the line between age and experience gets deliberately blurred. It's much easier for a company to say, we're looking for someone with 2 to 3 years of experience than to say, no one over 35 need apply.
Right.
But the impact is the same.
It's a sneaky way of doing things, but it's happening everywhere. And, it makes me think, are we as individuals part of the problem? Not in the sense that we're actively discriminating,
Right.
but could our own unconscious biases be playing a role? How many times have we heard someone say, oh, that new app is too complicated, I'm too old to figure it out?
It's insidious how these messages get ingrained in us from a young age, and they can become self-fulfilling prophecies. And on the flip side, there's immense pressure in the tech world to be seen as the young genius, and that can be incredibly damaging as well.
It's like this constant race against time, always feeling like you need to prove yourself before you're considered too old.
And that fear is exploited by companies that want to keep wages low and cycle through employees quickly. It's cheaper and easier to hire a recent graduate than to invest in developing someone with decades of experience.
But that short-sighted approach is going to backfire. The reality is that the workforce is aging, and companies that cling to this obsession with youth are going to have a hard time filling positions.
The talent shortage is already here, and it's only going to get worse. Companies that don't embrace age diversity will be left behind.
So what's the solution?
Yeah.
It's not just about passing laws or filing lawsuits. We need a fundamental shift in how we value experience.
Absolutely. We need to move away from this disposable workforce mindset and create a culture that recognizes the long-term benefits of investing in employees, regardless of their age.
It's about seeing experience not as a burden, but as a valuable asset. Think about it. Older workers have weathered recessions, market crashes, technological disruptions. They've seen it all, and that resilience is invaluable.
They've also built relationships, cultivated expertise, and developed a deep understanding of their industries. That kind of knowledge is irreplaceable.
And don't forget about mentorship. Older workers have so much to offer younger employees in terms of guidance, support, and perspective. Imagine the possibilities for cross-generational learning if we encouraged more mentorship programs.
It would be incredible. It creates a more inclusive and dynamic workplace where everyone feels valued and supported.
So let's challenge ourselves to think differently about age and experience. Let's question our own biases, celebrate the accomplishments of older workers, and build a culture where everyone has the opportunity to contribute and thrive.
It's time to rewrite the narrative on aging and work. The future belongs to those who embrace the full spectrum of human experience and talent, and that includes people of all ages.
That's a powerful statement. And it brings us to the end of our deep dive into age discrimination in the tech industry. It's been a thought-provoking conversation, and I hope it's given you some new insights and perspectives.
Remember, this isn't just a tech problem, it's a societal issue. And it starts with each of us. What will you do to create a more age-inclusive world?
That's a great question to ponder. Until next time, deep divers, stay curious and keep exploring.